What's up, everybody? Jesse with Cycle News. Welcome to, Kaweah Creek Motocross track where we're doing our 450 shootout. We do it here almost every year, and we're gonna head to Glen Helen tomorrow to get some more laps in. But man, it was a great day out here. We had a really deep stack of talented test riders, which is always nice to have a diverse group of people to test the bikes, and I think we did that really well this year. Initial impressions are you're going to have a hard time going wrong with 450 motocross bikes if that's in your market this year, or if you're in the market for one of those bikes this year. The nitpicking that we're going to do, and we talk about these bikes in the article, are going to be really microscopic issues that are based on the aggregated of everybody's opinions. And I think the bikes that are the easiest to get along with will shine. The ones that are just, the most comfortable, have the easiest power to ride, and, don't have a harsh spot or somewhere that really causes an issue with a rider's personality or something like that. And I think the bikes that are topping that list are the ones that have topped it for a few years. Yamaha and Kawasaki are probably really high up there this year for everybody. The Kawasaki really seems to have, refined its easeability to ride this year. Tons of traction, really predictable front end, great power. It's not obnoxiously loud, even though it kind of has a big exhaust pipe. It sounds great when you ride it. It's torquey and really kind of, just kind of like a meaty, torquey sound. Kawasaki, I think, is going to be a lot of people's favorites. The Yamaha is a perennial favorite. It's got the best suspension in the field as far as what it does on the track, as far as obstacles and jumps. It's predictable all the time. It's got a big range of use from slow vet guys like me to top pros like Derek Kelly, who was out here testing with us today. The Austrian bikes, they've really led the field of advancements coming on their platforms. They've knocked that weight threshold down and down and down every year for a few years there. This is the first year where we're coming into a shootout where they kind of feel a little dated almost, where they're not coming in with like the most advanced set of componentry on the bike, or maybe not the lightest. Well, they're still the lightest, but I guess it's not as much lighter as the bikes were in the past. But despite that, I think they still are, some of the top performers. The Husqvarna and the KTM, even though they share a lot of components and they're made in the same buildings, they're quite a bit different, and people will have big opinions on how the power is delivered and how that power delivery affects the chassis and the suspension. It has different handlebars, so the flex on the handlebars are different. A lot of those sort of things. So it's always interesting to ride them back to back. Personally, I think the Husqvarna fits my riding style a little better. It's got a torquier, sort of slower revving engine. It feels a little old school, feels a little chunky. But to me, where I want to just have torque coming out of a corner without having to build a lot of revs or rely on a fast revving motor, that just feels more comfortable to me. The KTM just revs a little. It needs to rev up a little more, and then it just makes tons of power on the top end. And when a 450 is making a ton of power on the top end, it starts to scare me to death. So I just kind of chop the throttle, and I prefer to have a lot of torque, and I can just cheat my way around the track that way. The Honda, all new this year, came in with a lot of hype. Got a rocket of a motor. I think the motor is untapped still, and probably with fuel mapping and refinements they're going to be doing in a few years, that thing's going to continue to be a motor class leader. I just think it needs some more work on the chassis setup, maybe suspension settings, but to me the suspension's working fine on the Honda. It just seems like the chassis isn't in the right angle or in the right relationship with the ground all the time, so it gives me a somewhat of an unconfident feeling in the front end a little bit. But the motor was atrociously fast on the Honda today. So I think that's my basic rundown today. I think we're going to learn a lot more at Glen Helen. Glen Helen's a challenging track, and there's just a lot to learn in these bikes, but man, they're super powerful. They're so fast that they just make you want to get in shape before you come ride them.
Initial impressions, all the bikes are really good this year. I mean, they've all kind of improved on their previous models, I feel like, for the most part, except for Honda. And yeah, everybody's really pushing towards a more perfected bike. I mean, everybody's technology and testing has improved over the last few years, and all the bikes are really close. The track conditions favored a few different bikes, like the Husky with their lower suspension setting. I felt like it favored the hard pack slick sections quite a bit better than the other bikes. I felt like the KTM and Husky's power handled well out here, and the Yamaha also performed well for me, and then the new Honda. It's a completely different bike. I feel like it handles similar to how it did last year, but there's also a lot of characteristics that are quite different.
So all these bikes are really close. I think some of the standout features for me, the KTM feels really light, really nimble. I'm impressed with the air fork much more than I've been in the last few years on the KTM and on the Husqvarna. And big differences I noticed on the Husqvarna compared to the KTM. A lot of consumers I think it's the same bike, just a different trim. They're definitely way different. So that's something that I noticed. Something that I'm going for in my test is to say, what bike could I go the fastest on, the easiest, and for the longest amount of time? Like if I was gonna race a bike, which bike would I buy? Which bike's easiest to go do a moto on and like that I feel I could be competitive on? So that's something that I'm looking for. So far to me, the Kawasaki and the Yamaha are up front. I rode the KTM and liked it a lot, but it was also the first bike I rode today. So tomorrow I'll flip-flop that. I'll ride it last on the rough track to see if it really stands out the same way I liked it in the morning. Suspension on the Yamaha to me is top notch. I'm 175 pounds without gear on, and I feel like I wouldn't even need to get my suspension done. I could just jump on that bike and ride it the way it is. Same with the Kawasaki, very similar. Set the sag the way I want it and get on it and I could go race. A few things that I really want to like the Honda. It looks so cool, and obviously, you know, brand new bike is something that's really cool, but a few things on the Honda that I'm just not super excited about. I'm gonna mess with it a little bit more tomorrow and see if we can fine tune it, and yeah, go from there.
So I was super anxious to ride the Honda, and yeah, I first got on the bike, it felt very slim. It's probably one of the slimmest bikes in the class, and I'm really excited. The power is, I felt a little bit of hesitation like riding it in the pits. I don't know if it's like a ridge feeling or ECU, it might be dirty. But once you're out on the track, that completely goes away. And the power is pretty incredible. The suspension, I had a little bit of struggle with the suspension. I couldn't quite find a happy place with the suspension. But overall, the bike turned very well. It's predictable, it feels very nimble, it's light. It does feel stable at speed, but I think the suspension will help that stability out with some, you know, I did feel a little bit of nervousness, but nothing like where it was totally caught me off guard. So the Yamaha, great platform. You know, a few years back I had issues with the Yamaha kind of being bigger and a wider bike, and within 2 laps I felt right at home on the Yamaha. It's very nimble, stable. It doesn't do anything surprising. It doesn't point and shoot exactly like a Honda, but if you look where you want to go, it's going to go there, and it's going to track well. Suspension is very plush, very comfortable. You can push it. It's very confidence-inspiring suspension. The engine is incredible. Very broad, usable power. You can rev it out, lug it, and it does it all well. So I'm very happy with the Yamaha. I think it's a great bike. KTM, very good bike. It's I was still not quite sold on the air fork, but I think they made huge improvements, and I noticed a big difference. This suspension is very comfortable. I feel like if you push it just a little bit, you could probably nitpick the suspension, especially maybe the fork a little bit. But for my ability, and the suspension was great. You know, it's easy to make those adjustments with air pressure, and no surprises. It handled very well. It feels as light as they say it is. Very nimble, corners well, tracks well, stable at speed. Husqvarna, it's weird because you think Husqvarna KTM is going to be pretty close to the same, but they're actually quite a bit different. The power felt a little softer in even the aggressive mat, and the suspension felt a little plusher. Not quite soft, I would say soft, but just a little bit more forgiving. But something, if you were to push, I would probably want to bump the air pressure up or do something different with the shock. But brakes are top notch. Same with the KTM, the clutch, brakes, all that are great on those bikes. The Kawasaki, for me, I was very, very happy with the Kawasaki. So that bike, I made 0 changes to today. Like, I asked for the different coupler just to try it out. Suspension, it's pretty incredible. I think they hit the mark. You can play ride with it, you can ride aggressive. If you're a little bit bigger, heavier guy, I weigh 185. I felt like if I pushed it just a little harder, I maybe want to like stiffen up the suspension just a little bit. But overall, like, the suspension's well balanced. It performs very well. Coming out of corners under heavy acceleration, the back end just tucks and just hooks up and goes. The clutch was a big improvement for me for this year. I had no issues with the clutch. And the engagement points and everything else was super smooth, and felt no fade. Shiftings were good. Brakes, everything, all that were great.
The KTM was just kind of what we expected. I really like the overall power. It has a real broad power band, so it really never falls off. It's really nice. I really like it. The suspension, I'm still not a big fan of air forks, but it handles really well, and I was greatly impressed with the improvements they've made over the past 2 years, I would say. The Husky, they always say the Husky and KTM, they're the same, but they're really not. They're different. I believe the Husky sits about 10 millimeters lower than the KTM, making it very easy to drive flat corners. It really gets into the ruts and stays into the ruts. I really like that. Again, the suspension, still not my favorite, but they've come a long ways with it, along with the overall power band of the Husky, very similar to the KTM characteristics. The Honda, I would say it was most anticipated bike to ride today. It's a all new platform with all new goodies, a new frame and whatnot. I wasn't a huge fan of the Honda today, and I'm a big Honda guy. I've always loved the Honda feel. Today I just couldn't seem to find exactly what I was looking for. When it came to suspension, the bike, the front end's very, if you say it's very soft, but it's very stiff at the same time. The valving and the fork springs, they just don't match. There's something in there's not matching. Overall feel wasn't what I expected. I just put it that way. It's just, Yamaha, to me, overall, best bike to jump on and go for it. Chassis is still has that square feel to it, but it's still, I think, one of the better motorcycles out here in the class. I really enjoy the Yamaha. Didn't really have to mess with the clickers that much, and basic jump on and go and have fun motorcycle. Kawasaki, very similar with the Yamaha as well. Kind of just jump on, set sag, make a few, I went a little stiffer on the fork today with the leaner coupler, which made the bike really come alive. And even the standard map or the standard coupler is really nice. Still kind of looking for that map switch maybe with the Kawasaki. Maybe that's maybe their next thing to look into, kind of like what everyone else has, I would say. But other than that, I mean, the Kawi overall feel, very plush motorcycle, very to the ground, very planted, good motor package, and hydraulic clutches. I wish they'd go back to a cable, but that's just me. So, yeah.
That's a wrap on the 2021 Cycle News 450 Motocross Shootout. And if we've learned one thing this year, it's that everything in life needs to be balanced. That's going to be the theme of this year's shootout. I think it's the theme of all the 450 motocross bikes when you start evaluate them at your dealership. And I think the best way to find balance in anybody's life is to be really honest with who you are. So don't fool yourself into thinking that you're going to go qualify for a national if you're not that guy or gal. If you're going to be a guy that goes out on the vet track and spins some laps with your buddies, just know going in to your purchase decision that that's who you are, and you're going to be a lot happier with your bike decision. I think you're going to read in the Cycle News pages that this was an extremely close shootout, as it has been for really the last 10 years. The interesting things that we see rising to the top of this is that we had two very diverse groups of test riders. We had like the average Joe guys, and we had the really fast guys. And the results were similar but skewed consistently into those two groups to make, the overall shootout winner really rise to the top. I think it's safe to say that the Kawasaki KX450 rose to the top in both of our categories due to its ease of use, its ample but controlled power, its very comfortable chassis, extreme stability, and really just not doing anything wrong for anybody, but being competitive enough for the fast guys and comfortable enough for the average guys. Up next, the Austrian bikes are going to come in 1 and 2 with KTM taking second and Husqvarna in third. Again, that really shows a little bit of a skew to the faster group, voting the KTM the top of their list most of the time. It's got a rocket ship of a motor that never signs off. It's got an aggressive, slim geometry to the chassis, so when you're riding aggressively, it really starts turning into a bike that's responsive and very dynamic on the track. The Husqvarna is just a little bit lower overall in chassis, a little bit smoother of a power delivery, not as snappy, not as massively aggressive as the KTM, but still like a very fantastic chassis. Really, the Husqvarna coming in third is a deadlock tie with the Yamaha this year. And really the tiebreaker was we have a low point system, and the Husqvarna just edged it out a little bit on the points. So that was really close. Coming in last this year, unfortunately, is the Honda CRF 450R, brand new bike for Honda this year. Had a lot of expectations for that bike, and it's just not living up to them quite yet. We think it needs another bit of refinement, both in engine delivery. Got a massive motor making tons of power. It's a little bit inconsistent in its delivery, and the chassis seems to be so precise and so tight that it takes a very specific setup to get it to work. In fact, we had a hard time getting it to where we could find a balance and get it to settle into any comfortable at our high-end speed guys or our intermediate guys. So right now the Honda's a work in progress, we feel, and we think it's going to really shine probably shortly after a little bit more development of the bike. It's fresh off the assembly line, so we expect that thing to improve a lot. Once again, Kawasaki just showed everybody that with a tiny bit of refinement this year, third year this model's been out now in its current state, it's really just putting the power to the ground consistently. It's easy to control anywhere in the track. It's very stable, so it's got high speed stability, plus it turns really well. It sounds good when you're on the bike. The suspension's great. That one's really just, taking the title this year. We're really excited to keep testing these bikes. We're really excited about the 250 Shootout coming up because we got a new brand coming in with gas that I think we're going to be able to loop into that. And man, we just hope you enjoy the story in Cycle News. It's a digital magazine you can check out for free every week. It gets delivered to your inbox. You can always check it out on cyclenews.com and hit us up with any questions or any other bike tests you'd like to see. Thanks.